So, you hear the words republic and democracy thrown around all the time, right? A lot of people use them like they mean the same thing, but what if they don't? What if they're actually polar opposites? Today, we're going to dig into what these two words really mean, especially when it comes to your own personal freedom.
All right, so here's our game plan for this explainer. First, we'll start with a foundational warning. Then we'll define our key terms and look at what the founders actually had to say. After that, we'll uncover a fascinating shift in definitions, explore the consequences for liberty, and finally, we'll talk about a path back to what's described as true freedom.
Okay, let's kick things off by going way back to a single moment, a single question, right at the birth of the United States. This one little exchange really sets the stage for everything we're about to discuss.
So the story goes that someone asked Benjamin Franklin what kind of government they had just created, and his response? A republic if you can keep it. Now think about that. That's not just an answer, is it? It's a warning. It's a challenge. So what on earth did he mean by a republic? And maybe more importantly, what does it take to keep it?
All right, to even begin to unpack that warning from Franklin, we have got to be clear on our terms. And this is where it gets really, really interesting. Because the difference between a republic and a democracy is at the absolute heart of this whole thing. So, first up, republic. The word itself actually comes from Latin, libere res publica, which literally means free from things public. The whole idea, the very foundation, is that you, the individual, and your right to choose are separate from the control of the group or the state. Your rights come first.
Now, let's look at democracy. It's presented here as something totally different. This is a system where the group, the collective, the majority gets to decide what's right and wrong for everybody. The will of the crowd becomes the law of the land, whether you agree with it or not.
And boom, here's the side-by-side. It just lays the conflict bare. A republic is all about individual liberty. Your rights are seen as inherent, something you're born with, and the government's power is supposed to be limited. A democracy? That's about collective rule. Rights are something the majority grants you, which also means they can take them away. Power ends up being centralized with the group. See? They're not just different flavors of the same thing. They're presented as complete opposites.
Okay, so keeping those definitions in your head, what did the actual founders of America think about a pure democracy? Well, let's just say their words might shock you a little.
Let's start with James Madison, the guy often called the father of the Constitution. He did not pull any punches. He basically saw pure democracy as a straight-up threat to personal safety and property rights. He called it vile.
Then you've got Fisher Ames, one of the guys who wrote the First Amendment. And his description? Wow. He called democracy a volcano. Think about that image. It might look stable, but underneath, it's just hiding the fire and chaos of its own destruction.
And if you thought that was intense, listen to John Adams. He was even more direct. He basically said that democracies are doomed to fail. They always burn out, and in his words, commit suicide. No exceptions.
And to wrap up this chorus of warnings, here's John Marshall, the longest-serving Chief Justice in U.S. history. For him, the difference was simple. A balanced republic is order. A democracy? That's just chaos. Plain and simple.
So wait a second. If all these founders were so dead set against democracy, how did we get to a point where America is constantly called one? Well, this is where the plot thickens. It turns out the very meaning of the word was changed, and it looks like it was changed on purpose. Okay, you have to see this. This is incredible. In 1928, look at how the official U.S. Army training manual defined democracy. It's exactly what the founders warned about. Mob rule, anarchy, even says its attitude toward property is communistic. Now, fast forward just 24 years to 1952. The same manual does a complete 180. Suddenly it's saying the United States is a democracy, and that's a good thing. This wasn't just some typo, folks. This was a deliberate re-education campaign.
And changing a word in a manual might not seem like a big deal, but it has huge real-world consequences. This shift sets up a fundamental clash between the freedom of the individual and the ever-growing power of the state.
Here's the chain of logic that's presented. It starts with Karl Marx's infamous line, "Democracy is the road to socialism." From there, socialism itself is framed as a recipe for failure and a form of slavery. It's a system where the law gets twisted into a tool for plunder, and the welfare state is even positioned as an enemy of religion. And it all boils down to this one simple, powerful idea, summed up perfectly by President Calvin Coolidge. There's no such thing as group liberty. Liberty is personal. At the end of the day, all liberty is individual liberty.
So, it stands to reason when the power of the collective goes up, the freedom of the individual has to go down.
So, with all these warnings and grim consequences laid out, what's the way back? What's the path to real freedom? Well, the answer we're given here isn't a political one. It's actually personal, and you could say spiritual.
And it really starts with this question from Thomas Jefferson. He asks, how can we possibly think our liberties are safe if we forget where they come from? If we remove the belief that these freedoms are a gift from God, not from government? The argument here is simple. You can't. The only firm foundation for liberty is believing it comes from a source much higher than any human institution.
And that belief leads to what's called the narrow way to liberty. It's not about a big political movement. It's about what you do. Step 1, seek out divine principles. Step 2, live by the golden rule. Value your neighbor's rights as much as you value your own. That is the very definition of virtue. And only by doing those things can you truly walk in individual liberty.
So that leaves us with one final big question for you to think about. If a republic is built on the foundation of individual virtue, and a democracy is built on the collective will of the majority, which path do you think truly secures your liberty?
Hey, if this breakdown got you thinking, do us a huge favor. Go ahead and like, subscribe, and maybe share this with someone you know. It makes a huge difference and really helps us keep the conversation going.
Now, believe it or not, we've only scratched the surface here. If you want to go way deeper, we've linked the original source material for this explainer down in the description. I highly recommend checking it out.
And one last thing. If these ideas really connected with you, and you're looking for a community of people who are exploring these things more, there's a link in the description to join the living network of seekers for God's kingdom. Thanks so much for tuning in.